Hey guys, welcome to Poor Man Mods. Today I'm going to show you a step-by-step on how to install LS400 brake calipers onto your IS300. Now I'm literally going to show you everything that you need to do in order to do this upgrade. I'm going to show you how to sandblast the calipers, powder coat them, rebuild them, install it onto the car. I'm going to show you what adapters you need for the calipers. I'm going to show you how to install the RCAs. Literally everything that you need to know about installing this on your IS300. I'm going to show you. Fair warning though, when doing this, if you install the RCAs, roll center adjusters, which I really do recommend installing, it is going to drop the car about an inch. So if you have coilovers, be prepared to crank them up if you don't want to lower your car. And if you just have lowering springs, if you don't want the car any lower, you might have to mess with a lift or leveling kit like I am, or you might have to go back to the factory springs. So this will drop your car about an inch, and you'll find out later in the video on why that happens. So with that being said, let me show you how I installed the LS400 brake calipers on my IS300. Okay, so here are my 4-piston Brembos, at least I believe they're Brembos. These are LS400 calipers off of I believe, a 1994 LS400. And I got these as a pair used with all of the hardware and everything, the brake pad retainers, the brake sensors, the bolts, all that good stuff. Got both of these off eBay for, I believe, less than 200 bucks. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to plug up the brake line hole with the bolt, and then I'm going to sandblast these and powder coat these, because I want these to be a nice glossy blue. I think that'll look good on the car. So let's get these things ready to be blasted, and blast them, coat them. I'm going to clean them with brake clean to get as much of the oil and crap off as I can. Get all the unnecessary stuff that doesn't have to go into the blast cabinet. And if I can, I will try to have links to all the parts that you need for this install in the description down below. So links to the calipers, the rotors, the pads, brake lines, the adapter brackets, the RCAs, all that good stuff. I will try to have links to it. Try to help you guys out. Now I am going to be rebuilding these calipers. I got a rebuild kit which includes the O-rings and such for the pistons, but I'm going to do that after I blast them because I don't want sand to get into the caliper. So right now I'm just going to put the bolts to where the brake line would go to fill the hole, and then I'm going to put it in the sandblaster like this, get it all clean, and then I would take it apart to rebuild it. Alright, got the bolt into the caliper. Let's put it in my sandblaster. This is the Eastwood workbench or tabletop sandblaster. This is their smaller version. Now I know a lot of you guys are thinking that you aren't able to sandblast and powder coat your own stuff because that's what I'm going to be showing you how to do in this video. But, you know, this makes it very achievable and doable in your basement. This is very affordable. It's small. It's not heavy. Doesn't take up a ton of room. And you know, with this Eastwood sandblaster, you can sandblast in your mom's basement like me. It's affordable, like I said, and it's small. Anyone can do it, and you can start sandblasting and powder coating stuff in your basement with this blaster. So let's fire this thing up and get these calipers clean. Alright, this is caliper number 2. Alright, got this one blasted. This sandblaster is awesome. I friggin' love it. So, it's all clean now. Nice bare aluminum, ready for powder. I'm actually going to decide to rebuild them after I powder coat them, so I'm going to throw them in the oven just like this, and it'll probably damage the O-ring and boot right here. But then after we're done, we're going to replace all that good stuff. So let's fill these holes so we don't get powder in the threaded sections. And yeah, make them nice and blue. Okay, so we have the one plug in the hole for the brake hose. Definitely want to make sure powder does not get in there. Now we're going to put plugs in these threads. So I've got the Eastwood dual voltage powder coating gun, which isn't that expensive at all. Got their box that it came in for the cabinet. I have a copper bar going across to hang all my stuff. Got the caliper in there. And if you're wondering about all the dust getting everywhere, if you're in your basement, because if you watch Eastwood's videos, they just show them doing it in like a garage and they just blow the powder out. Like, if you're in a garage, it's not a big deal, but if you're in a basement, you don't want powder going everywhere. So I have just a regular box fan right here, and on the back, I duct taped a super high filtration HVAC filter. So all the extra powder that is just sitting around here gets sucked right into the fan, so dust doesn't go everywhere. It's a super confined system, keeps my basement nice and clean. And this is how I'm able to actually powder coat in my basement. So I have some blue powder here, some nice gloss blue powder in this gun. So we're going to spray this caliper, throw it in the oven, and hopefully it turns out pretty good. Turn the fan on. We're going to start off on the high voltage setting. If you're wondering how I'm getting light in the cabinet, I cut out a hole in the ceiling and put boxing tape up there, and I have my light up top. And this allows you to see everything. So, got my Eastwood dual voltage gun. Let's get to it. Oh, dude, that looks awesome. Yes. This is the hard part, rotating it. Man, this is gonna look so good. Now this is the fun part. Trying to load it into the oven without getting burned, because you have to preheat this to 425 degrees. So it's hot, and I'm gonna try to put it in there. I touched it a little on the back side, which took some powder off, but luckily it's on the back. So I'm gonna leave it and close the door and set the timer for 20 minutes. So this whole powder coating setup that I have is pretty affordable, and it literally fits in my mom's basement. This is just a conventional electric oven that I got off Craigslist for like 40 bucks. It's ugly, it's old, but it works. All you need to do is make sure that you don't eat out of it and make sure it can get to 425 degrees. So got the Eastwood blast cabinet, got the Eastwood powder coating kit, and a cabinet out of their box, and an oven, and in your basement you can do all this yourself. Alright guys, got both these calipers powder coated. They're looking really good. I'm really pleased with how they turned out. They're not 100% perfect. There's a couple light areas around on the back, but that's okay because it's the back. But the front, looking really, really good. Now what we're going to do, these will not bolt up to the IS300 the way they sit right now. The distance between these two bolts right here and the hub on the car are slightly different, and you need to install these threaded adapters, but we do need to get these factory inserts out. You can use a press or other methods. Now I do have a press, and I realize most of you probably don't have a press. So I'm going to try to do this install without using my press. I'm going to get these out with my air hammer, which is a little bit more affordable and probably more realistic than having a press. So we're going to fold these things over, take our air hammer, and hit these threaded inserts out. We're going to come out this way, and then when we go to install this on the car, we can try to install these threaded adapters. Now you may have a better method of doing this than me, but I'm going to be using my air hammer with one of these pointed chisels, and I'm going to thread in an M12 by 1 1/4 bolt into the insert, and I'm going to hit the bolt to make the insert come out. Now it's going to be very hard to be controlled when doing this, so don't just go full out and hammer on it. Just give it a tap and tap and tap, and it'll work its way out. If you go crazy with it, you'll most likely hit the caliper and damage your beautiful powder coat. Ask me how I know. So we're going to put this all the way up against the bolt and just give it little taps like that. And as you can see, this is now loosened up, so this method does work. It just takes a little bit of time, and an air chisel is certainly cheaper than a press. Hey, just like that. Now we can remove the bolt and do the same thing to the other insert. Alrighty. This is what we just hammered out of the caliper. This is the original threaded insert where the hole is centered for the bolt. And this is what needs to be pressed in. As you can see, the hole's not centered. And this will allow it to bolt up to the hub. But we're not going to install these just yet. Now that we have the threaded inserts out of the caliper, we're going to rebuild this caliper. We're going to be putting new dust boots and seals on there, on all 4 pistons. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the dust boots from the pistons. Grab a little pick or a flathead screwdriver. And pull all the dust boots off from around the piston, like that. Alright, now to replace the seal for the piston, we have to get the pistons out. Now I've heard of some people having success by blowing compressed air into the caliper and the pistons popping out. I tried that and it didn't work for me, so it's a pretty primitive method. It takes some time and you have to be careful doing it, but you can use a combination of screwdrivers and small pry bars to actually pry the piston out. We're going to start off with a screwdriver. You're going to stick it between the caliper and the piston and just pry up on the piston. Just like that. We lifted it up a little bit with the screwdriver. Now I'm going to step up to my pry bar. These things are not the easiest to get out. The square cut seal inside of it really does its job. And there we go. Got one out. Pretty tedious process, but just do the same thing to the other 4 pistons. Just keep prying them out. With the pistons out, we can remove the square cut seal inside of the bore. You need to grab a pick, preferably one with a little angle on it. Get the pick under the seal and pull the little stinker out. And do that to all 4 of them. Alright, grab your caliper rebuild kit and pull out the 4 square cut seals that are in the package. And place all of them in a little bit of brake fluid. This is to lubricate them up. Once you get it lubricated, place it in the bore. And it's going to be very hard to see, but you just need to get the seal to sit in the groove where the original one was. Just work your finger all the way around until you get it to sit in that groove, just like that. And they should just snap right into that groove. And install all 4 just like this. You definitely have to be careful when doing this. I'm not sure why it only messed up this one, but the brake fluid really damaged the powder coat on this caliper. The other one seems to be fine, but I tried to wipe it off and not looking the best. Oh well though. Take your pistons, also dip them in brake fluid, make sure they're nice and lubricated, and push them into the bore. You won't be able to push them by hand very far. Bless you! You won't be able to push them in very far by hand, but get them started and we'll finish them off with a C-clamp. Now we're going to use a C-clamp to push these pistons in. We're going to push it to where this lip right here is almost flush with the caliper. Take a new dust boot and have the lettering facing up. Work it around the piston. Take a small flathead screwdriver, pull up on the outside lip of the boot, and then you're going to place that over the lip on the caliper. Work it all the way around, and it should snap down. Just like that. Make sure you work it all the way around the piston and the caliper, make sure it snaps in. Then you can push the piston the rest of the way in and do the same thing to the other three. Alright, we just successfully rebuilt our caliper. It's got all new seals and dust boots on it. Unfortunately, the powder did get a little bit messed up from the brake fluid, but that's okay. It's still going to look better than it did before. So now we're actually ready to start working on the car. Then we're going to use a 17mm socket to remove the 2 bolts securing the brake caliper. Once the brake caliper is removed, set it aside, don't disconnect the brake line yet, and remove the brake rotor. If you still have the factory heat shields, you will need to trim them in order to fit the calipers, but because mine were so rusty, I actually lost them a couple years ago. So you'll either need to trim your dust shields or completely remove them. Next, we're going to remove the 2 17mm bolts securing the ball joint to the steering knuckle in order to install the roll center adjuster. Lift up on the steering knuckle and install the roll center adjuster. Now, I did powder coat mine blue, so the tolerances are a little bit tighter, so I'm going to lubricate them up with WD-40 to make it easier to install. I still recommend doing this though, just to make it a little bit easier when installing the bolts. Here you can see why we needed to install the RCAs. It lifted up the steering knuckle about an inch. Without these, the brake caliper would hit the tie rod and they just wouldn't fit. Firmly press the inserts into the caliper, and you want the holes facing away with each other to make as big of a gap as possible. So make sure they're facing away from each other. Put it onto the hub and start to thread the bolts in. Once you get them started, you can thread the bolts in all the way, and it should pull the adapters in. Okay, once the threaded inserts are aligned, take the caliper back off and install the brake rotor. Get the caliper installed back onto the car with the brake rotor. Install the brake pads. Install the top pin. Install this retention spring. Then install the little tiny metal retainer on the 2 pins. Okay, now we're going to install our new brake line into our caliper. Our nice braided stainless steel line. Make sure you get the line tight, but don't over tighten these. These are banjo bolts and they can break really easily. Now get a 10mm line wrench and break loose the brake line going into the brake hose. This can be pretty stuck and corroded if your car has some miles on it. And if you don't use a line wrench like this, it's very likely that you can strip the brake fitting, and then you're going to have a really bad day. So make sure that you use a line wrench. The brake line is now loose. Grab yourself a set of pliers and remove the clip holding on the brake hose. And now this caliper can get out of here. Now reinstall the clip for the brake line and tighten the brake line down into your new braided stainless steel line. Alright, now we're going to crack the bleeder valve open, remove the cap from the master cylinder, and let this thing gravity bleed and fill up with fluid before we actually try to bleed it. Once you see fluid starting to come out of the bleeder, we can start to use our vacuum bleeder that we got from Eastwood. Alright, so we got this vacuum bleeder from Eastwood. Makes it really easy to bleed brakes when you're by yourself. Just pump it up to build vacuum pressure. Crack the bleeder and let it suck all the air and fluid out. Do this a couple times and your brakes are good to go. Beautiful. Alright, got the brakes installed. They're bled. Now, if you are going to run the factory wheels, like I said earlier, you will need 15mm wheel spacers. But I'm going to be rocking my Mark III Super wheels, so they'll fit perfectly. So that's how you install the LS400 brakes on your IS300. I'll have everything that you need in the description down below. Tools, parts, all that good stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Go put LS400 brakes on your IS300, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.